Welcome to week 5. This is the final week of instruction. After this, we will be taking our final exam. We've come a long way. This week, the textbook addresses the appraisal of special interests. These interests can be widely varied. It is important to know when we accept an appraisal assignment exactly what interest in the real estate we are appraising. Equally, it is important for the client to understand which interest we are appraising. For example, let's say we are considering to accept an assignment at the southwest corner of Main Street and Chapman Avenue in the city of Orange. Before accepting the assignment, we look up the property and see that it is a small shopping center. In reviewing the data, you notice that there are 5 parcels of land underneath the buildings. So, does the client want to know how much the building and the land is worth? Do they want to know how much one of the businesses is worth? Or maybe, is the owner of just one of the parcels of land on which the improvements are built, which is not owned by the same entity as the shopping center, want to know how much their one parcel is worth? As you can see, our job is to figure this out with our clients so we can properly assist them in their endeavors. You may think, well, the owner should know this when they call us or email us the assignment. Maybe, maybe not. Suppose it is for the estate tax return for the person who recently passed away who owned that one parcel of land under the improvements. Come to find out that the one parcel is on a ground lease to the owners of the shopping center. That's right. One of the 5 parcels is actually owned by somebody different than Corinthian Development, who owns the other 4 parcels and the improvements and the building on the land. So really, we're probably going to be looking at the income stream to the owner for the rent that Corinthian Development is paying to the one parcel. So you can see these appraisals can be complicated. Other interesting appraisal assignments are partial interest appraisals, which can also be challenging. Maybe a partner needs to be bought out of a property. Is the fair market value of that partial interest just a straightforward percentage interest? Not in all cases. So these appraisals can be extremely interesting. This learning unit also explores the different kinds of leases. In Chapter 13, we learn about gross leases. Gross leases are leases which we are most familiar with in the residential marketplace. You may pay $2,000 in rent for a 4-bedroom home. I wish I probably could not in the OC. However, if you look at the receiving end of this investment, the landlord is getting a gross rent of $2,000. But from that rent, he or she must also deduct their actual expenses, for example, maintenance, insurance, and taxes. So this would be referred to as a gross lease. And remember, from the investment side, what is most important in determining the value is the actual net rent to the owner, that is, the net operating income, NOI. And it is most important that we arrive at the NOI so that we can use the capitalization method that we learned about to turn that income into value. A second kind of lease is the net lease. The net lease is when one of the major expenses, for example, maintenance of the property, is also paid for by the tenant. And then last, there is a net lease, or referred to as a triple net lease, when all 3 of the major expenses, maintenance, insurance, and property taxes, are paid by the tenant. In a triple net lease, the owner receives almost all the equivalent of the net operating income. Really, the only difference is that the NOI still considers or subtracts from the triple net income the management and a reserve account for some long-term expenses like a new roof or maybe asphalt for a parking lot. We usually estimate 1 to 2% for reserves. This learning unit also explores the terms and various components of a lease. A lease may have various terms and conditions which can dramatically affect the income. One of the more important components of a lease is the renewal options, if any. And if there are options to renew, what are the terms of the option? For example, a tenant may have a gross lease of 5 years and a renewal option for 2 more 5-year terms at the same rate, say for example at $10,000 per month. However, if the renewal options says that it gets raised by the Consumer Price Index, CPI, at the beginning of each option, then that rate would be very different. Let's take a look and see what that looks like. After 5 years with an average CPI of 3%, which is pretty close to reality, the beginning rate would be $10,000 per month. The beginning rate of the first option would be $11,500 per month, and the beginning rate of the second option would be $13,225 per month. Obviously, you can see how this can dramatically affect the value of the property depending on which kind of option the particular kind of lease has. On another topic, this learning unit introduces us to appraisal management companies, AMCs. If you have talked to any ordinary appraisers, these AMCs are not very well liked. So why are they here? Well, coming through this last recession, and even before, there was a lot of pressure on the individual appraisers to come up with a value that was suitable, quote unquote, from the lender. Although that shouldn't affect an appraiser's judgment, it is unfortunate to report that it has in many cases affected the appraisal's better judgment. Sometimes because of the phenomenon known as lender pressure, appraisers have pushed their value and lost their good judgment. The reason for this, but not an excuse, is that many appraisers were fearful that they would not be rehired to do more assignments. Another reason, and definitely not an excuse, is greed, where the lenders were offering to pay more for the appraisal. In the last crisis, as prices were falling, many appraisers were asked to compromise their ethics. So basically, the government created the Home Valuation Code of Conduct, HVCC. There were companies created which are known as appraisal management companies, AMCs. These companies were created to go between the lender and the appraiser, a middleman, so to speak. So the lenders hired the AMCs, and the AMCs hired the appraisers. It seemed like a good theoretical solution to the problem. However, I'm not sure how well it's working. In most cases, there are complaints that the AMCs are getting half of the fee now, and that the AMCs are doing the pressuring instead of the lenders. It is an interesting debate, and is always curious to me as to why in every crisis we go through, first the 1989 FIRE after the savings and loan bailout, by the way, that is where appraiser licensing was initiated, and now this recent crisis, that the appraisers seem to be to blame for overestimating the values of the properties. However, no one seems to look at the other side. Has anybody really looked and seen what is going on from the lender's side and why they are doing the pressuring? Just a thought. I'm just saying. Has anybody watched the movie The Big Short? Last, these chapters talk about some professional appraisal organizations. For years, the NAREA and the Appraisal Institute were large competing organizations. One newer organization is the National Association of Appraisers, NAA. It seems to be a rather good and upcoming organization. Currently, I am on the educational committee for this national organization. They have a conference in November every year. You might look them up on Google if you're interested in pursuing a career in appraising. Belonging to a professional appraisal organization is truly a worthwhile thing to do. At the end of this week, your groups will be analyzing the data you have been researching regarding the class project home. Please discuss this thoroughly with all of your groupies and share all of your information. Once you agree or disagree on a final opinion of value, you'll be turning in that opinion to me. It will be interesting in reading about your opinions. Well, this completes the instructional part of the course. I hope you have enjoyed your online experience. Next week is the final exam. Review your materials ahead of time and you'll do just fine. Nice meeting you online.